Then let's do that. Hey, Greg. Hi, everyone. So, I've been interested in Hong Kong and Hong Kong's lawyers protesting as a human rights breach, or the human rights breaches by the Chinese government onto the Hong Kong people. I think that's pretty important to see hundreds of lawyers protesting. I think that's important should be important to the world. So, because I'm French-Canadian, French-speaking, I've picked up on pieces coming out of France. One of them this morning is I picked it up out of France, but out of a French link or video, but it was about a British lawyer who wrote the Declaration. I don't know what the Declaration is called. I'm calling it the Declaration of Hong Kong. And what the Declaration does is there's the video link above. And what the Declaration does is it keeps Hong Kong's democracy laws in effect within China. So almost like I'm just thinking out loud here, but I think that's almost like in Canada our charter rights. So I think that's pretty important. This lawyer says he was part of the team that wrote the Declaration, and it took me a few minutes to kind of wrap my head around the Declaration, but then I realized that's a lot like, and I knew the words, but I didn't know and then I realized it's the American Declaration. It would be similar to the American Declaration. So I don't know anything about the American Declaration, but it might be worth looking into. So the other thing I picked up this morning on the French Yellow Vest, it was a translated in French, and I think that's the same video I included above. I included 2 videos on Hong Kong and 2 videos on Russia. So one of the videos on Russia has a lawyer who became a politician, but everyone on her lawyer's team was jailed except her, because she had a young child at home. The laws in Russia prevents the mother of a young child from being jailed or something like that. So so the mother of this young child wasn't jailed because she had a young child. Every one of the lawyers in the firm were jailed except her. There's some of the political leaders in that party were jailed. And then when she started a hunger strike in early July, and so recently, I don't know if it was within the last weeks or days, but recently she was jailed. She was on her way to a unlawful protest, and so she was jailed on her way to the unlawful protest. So what do we do? What do we say? So that led me to these questions here above in the title is why am I not allowed, or anybody for that matter, why can't I have a police officer, and I say I as a soldier, but you know, why can't anybody have a police officer investigated? Now the reason I put soldier up above is because we sometimes or often are aware of certain laws, like, and I shouldn't say laws, but it is written in law, but cops have a clause that allows cops to do certain things in the performance of their duties. And that's reasonable. And actually, I should include a link from a video I just learned about. My lawyer was interviewed in a YouTube video, and he talks about that. I've always known about that as a soldier, so you know, when I know that cops are out and out simply breaking the law, I have a problem with that, because as a soldier I'm required to follow the law. So why shouldn't cops be required to follow the law? My lawyer explains it best in that video. I'll try to share it later. How does he? I can't remember the example he gives, but so and in the title there, I talk about why a soldier can't have a police officer investigated. I can't remember what else I wrote in the in the title, but hi everyone. Thanks, Nikki. So let's just maybe turn the tables a little bit about and talk about criminal politicians, because really that's what this whole video is about. You know, in Hong Kong, politicians choosing to jail people in China, so extraditing Hong Kong citizens to China to be trialed in China, and in Russia, jailing lawyers because they oppose the government, and jailing politicians, political prisoners, because they don't want competition, because the politicians don't want competition. So we need to put up gallows around Parliament Hill. We can, David. One of my friends from Alberta has gone to the RCMP station to urge the RCMP to file charges against Trudeau. And I really didn't want to. I got other things to do, to prepare for. I'm expecting a letter this morning. It's important, and that could take me all morning. Tomorrow I have in town here, just up the road. But I think tomorrow after my appointment, I'm going to go see the RCMP station and ask them why they haven't filed charges against Trudeau. And I might, I've done a little test here to see about, you know, not really disguising my camera, but making it so I can film it without making it obvious to the cops. So why should we have Trudeau investigated? It's perfect timing, surely. Shirley here says, beautiful flag behind you. And as far as I'm concerned, that's why we need to have Trudeau investigated. Because that flag used to mean something. Some different people tried. Veteran military analyst, retired RCMP terrorist investigator, presented evidence to the RCMP that gave him a file ready to copy. RCMP file number 18-004212. As a civilian, they gave Tom Quigan an RCMP file number of the investigation against Trudeau funding a terrorist organization. Also, a civilian tried to arrest Trudeau, and he was charged by the police. I think he's our first political prisoner. I don't know if I agree with how the guy did it, but he tried. And I think he was fully within his rights to, but there's other citizens who've, in January, February, have gone to there's different people who've been to the police station to urge the RCMP to file or to start an investigation into charges against Trudeau. So that's a good point. When I'm there tomorrow or Tuesday or Wednesday, I should ask them for the file number into the investigation of Trudeau. So now I know that that's not gonna produce a lot of effective results, but it's a step in the right direction. I think the only way charges will go ahead is if we, the people, file charges against Trudeau. And we can. I filed charges against the Edmonton Chief Crown Prosecutor, and that went to court. When did that go to court? That was June. It was about the 27th of June. It was Friday, June 2018, last year. So, on your earlier comment, Dave, about building gallows around Parliament Hill, I think we can, in a manner, affect similar results by filing charges against Trudeau. There's a newspaper that wrote, I hope the wind's better, I'm trying to cover the mic so it doesn't pick up so much wind. There's a newspaper that quoted or touched on Section 22 of the Criminal Code, and that's urging somebody to break the law, or counseling, advising somebody to break the law is a criminal offense, Section 22. It doesn't give the spiel, it just quotes the section as CC Section capital S 22, and that's Section 22 of the Criminal Code of Canada. So the newspaper also quotes Section 23, and Section 23 of the Criminal Code is aiding somebody in breaking the law, if I remember correctly. So, and that person is equally accountable for the law that's being broken. So it doesn't matter what the law that's being broken, if you're charged with, or if you're charged with telling somebody to break the law, it's as though you broke that law yourself. So 22 is a criminal offense, but it makes you accountable for the law the other person broke. And so does 23 of the Criminal Code. Section 23 of the Criminal Code is helping somebody break the law. So, and in the last 2 years, all my legal information and answers have come from the press. And like the two sections here. I've known about them before, but I forgot what they were. It was about 2 to 3 years ago. I think it was 2017. 2017, I learned about those two sections, but I forgot about them. Then, what's happened? Okay, so again in the press release, Tom Mulcair recently, former leader of the NDP, recently had a video interview where he quotes Trudeau, where Trudeau says in a video interview that Trudeau told his staff members to break the law, to not give the evidence required to conduct a thorough ethics breach violation. They were required by law to provide the evidence. Trudeau told his staff members not to give them the evidence. So Trudeau admitted he instructed his staff to break the law. So I'm just going to catch up on some of the comments. I will. That won't be hard. That's the easiest part, is just adding the file number. Tom Quigan's investigation into the RCMP file number. You're right, Dave. So that's the easy one. There's a few charges we can add. I can prepare them. It'll be my information, but I'm gonna need people from across the country to help file the charges. So and the reason one of our patriots was arrested is because of how it was done. The police fabricate evidence all the time. My lawyer, I'll include the video later, but my lawyer talks about that kind of thing. I didn't know my lawyer had made this video. He made somebody recorded him in a YouTube video before I met my lawyer, and he talks about how police fabricate evidence all the time, and they change documents to suit their needs. And so when our patriot tried to arrest Trudeau, the police did whatever they wanted. So what I'm suggesting is that we avoid the police, except I will go to the police detachment and ask them why they haven't filed charges against Trudeau, and I'll ask them for a file number of the apparent investigation into the ethics breach. Now, what else can I touch on? So what I'm asking people is not to go to the police to file charges, though you can ask why they haven't filed charges against Trudeau, and you can ask them for the RCMP file number of the investigation into the ethics breach. But to file charges, I think we need to go to the court of law to do that. Present present the information and evidence. Well, yeah, the information and evidence to a judge. And if we do this across the country, we well, Daryl, I'll need your help. And I think especially as veterans and natives, I think natives need to rise, and I think veterans and soldiers need to speak up, like the lawyers in Hong Kong. And I can prepare the information and evidence, but if I do this alone, it'll be ignored. If I have help from across the country, and I don't want to exclude anybody, but I think veterans and natives will have a louder voice. I hate to say, but I think that's the thing to do, is to have natives and veterans file the charges, and patriots and anybody to go to a courthouse and present the information against Trudeau. So when that happens, for those of you who might consider it, the courthouse is supposed to give you a file number. Not required, but they're supposed to so there's different ways it can happen. The judge might take the information. The judge might have you swear the information, and the judge might have you swear the information and give you a file number. So no, Daryl, I do not have a GoFundMe. Of my own case, my lawyer accepted an investigation into the Edmonton Chief Crown Prosecutor for obstruction of justice altogether, and I wasn't done preparing all the charges, but so far, and initially about a year ago, I prepared about 20 charges against the Edmonton Chief Crown Prosecutor. Some of them are intimidation, obstruction of justice, public mischief, well, Daryl, I would need help to start a GoFundMe. There's previously been one set for me, but I'm the struggle is real. As a soldier, I expected to, and you would know, Daryl, as a soldier, I expected to, and I didn't sign up to defend human rights. It just became a thing where, my friends went to, in '97, my friends went to Quebec to fight the ice storms. And the same spring, they went to Manitoba to fight the floods. You might have been in the forces at that time. But those two events back to back kind of put that in me. I didn't know what it was at the time. It affected me, and I just wanted to help people, but I couldn't. I didn't have the words to explain it. But today I would say that I've trained for 24 years to defend human rights, and I'm not going to stop because of one criminal cop or one criminal politician who thinks he's above the law. The law, okay, so to quote my lawyer, the law as it is written works. What doesn't work is those upholding the law. So to expand on that, weeks ago I've found evidence that the Parliament, like cops who as the saying goes, in the performance of their duties, politicians in Parliament have the law written so that they're allowed to break the law in the performance of their duties. So they might talk about a law that to change that law might be breaking the law. So to talk about changing the law might be breaking the law, depending on the laws they're talking about. That's reasonable. What Trudeau did is not reasonable. The other thing that might be reasonable in parliamentary duties as an MP, when it's reasonable to break the law, might be if there's a threat after you. If there's a threat, it might be reasonable to drive in an aggressive manner to avoid something. That's reasonable, and that is in the performance of their duties. But driving erratically for fun or to help your friends, that's not reasonable. ACS Tech. So you were in the forces in the late 70s. Well, Daryl, I hate to say, but I was born in 76. But I think a lot of us vets join for similar reasons. And I've already spoken to some vets across the country, and I've spoken with natives across the country, and I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I can prepare the information. That's easy. To file charges against Trudeau. But if I go by myself to any courthouse to file charges against Trudeau, the judge is going to laugh at me. But if we all go together in a matter of a week or two, they won't be able to ignore all of us. They'll try. And I've had plans in the works for some time. I don't know how that's gonna go. I think we can go ahead with that. At the same time, I also have to file charges against the lawyer. It wouldn't be my first time filing charges against the lawyer, because the Edmonton Chief Crown Prosecutor is just that. He's just a lawyer. I'll look up your page, Daryl. Aircraft Structures Technician. I think that's what my aunt was, Dave. In Bosnia, my aunt painted rats on planes because everybody called us Canadians pack rats, because we're always borrowing ammunition from other countries because we're using up all the ammunition, is the way I understood it. But she did body work on planes, patching bullet holes, stuff like that. That sounds about the same as ACS Tech. Denis Chevrier. Okay, I should let you guys go. I used to be proud of our country. I used to be proud of our flag. Voting Trudeau won't solve the problem. You only expose the problem. Politicians are saying to vote out Trudeau. They're not going to change anything. Politicians aren't going to change anything. It's up to us to set the standard. It's up to us to set the example. I'll prepare the information against Trudeau. If we all rise together, we'll need the press. That's how we're going to do it. We'll use the press. I agree, Daryl. Linkster, Bernie is the only one I can stomach. Yep. But Dave says it won't be very convenient, but we need a civil war. Both of you are veterans. You'll know that it takes different weapons to have effect on a war. So, Daryl, as artillery, you would know that the gun is not the weapon. The gun is not the weapon, it's the means of delivery. How we deliver these charges against Trudeau is what matters. So, to Dave's comment earlier, it won't be very convenient, but we need a civil war. I think there's different ways to affect a civil war. And I think, well, I will say, and I've said it before, I have an appeal to be reinstated back in the forces. And I won't let one criminal cop affect that. But, so to say, I have to keep things legal, lawful, to be reinstated back in the forces, but a friend of mine set the standard on getting back in the forces, and he wrote my appeal to be reinstated back in the military. And so Civil War, Dave. And the artillery. The guns is a means of delivery. How do we translate that into English? So I would say that the people is the means of delivery. And Daryl Inkster would know that that's right, Daryl. The men are the means of delivery. The people. So Dave's comment about the Civil War, like artillery, the gun is the means of delivery, the projectile is the weapon. So there's different weapons. I want to keep things legal and lawful, and I think we can, but I think what's the saying, girl? I can't remember. Shake and bake. I think this should be Operation Shake and Bake. We'll shake them up and bake Trudeau legally. Operation Shake and Bake is in effect. Yep. We'll file, so the weapon being, the weapon of the artillery being the projectile. So, for those of you that don't know, the projectiles that are fired from artillery guns, you can fire different weapons. Some of them, you can change what the weapon does by applying a different time or fuse, or so or changing the projectile and firing. Sometimes in the artillery, in a gun battery, there'll be 4 guns typically, and some guns might fire certain weapons, other guns might fire a maximum effect. And that's exactly how we're gonna do this. And we'll use a press. We'll file charges against Trudeau. And we'll file charges against Trudeau. And yeah. So Linda says, if we have a civil war, Trudeau will call for martial law and will not call an election, giving more time to destroy That's exactly right, and he probably doesn't know that, but he will probably try that. I've read that in the Constitution. The Constitution says, and I can't remember how it's worded exactly, but a Parliament can decide to stay in power longer than is required in time of need, such as civil war. So, I don't want a civil war, but I think we can do so lawfully, legally, as Canadians do. Well, Daryl, I think that's why we need vets and natives and patriots, those who think they have the balls to. So, I forgot. Thanks, Daryl. So I got my phone covered from the wind again. Harpreet from India is watching. I have, of this movement, I knew this would be a global thing, and over the last 4 years I've got friends from across the world, because I didn't expect this yellow vest global revolution to come, but I knew this was a global problem, and this yellow vest global revolution is going to help us here in Canada. They can't they can't ignore everyone from around the world. Russia has been protesting for years, and so has France, but now this is, and we don't see what's happening in Russia. I only caught it because of the Yellow Vest France, and one of the Yellow Vest Gilets Jaunes pages. I've known they've protested in Russia, but this latest development seems to be thousands of protesters in Russia, and that's new. Well, Dave, you didn't join as a tanker, but I've explained how the artillery works, and in the tanks you have similar weapons. You can change, well, I don't know if you can, no you can't. I don't think you can change the charge in a tank round, the propellant, but you can use different projectiles to have different effect. And so that makes me want to look up the Civil War definition. But in the American Civil Rights Movement, there's 3 key players. One was the motivator, and that was, what's his name? That was Martin Luther King, MLK. Another was Malcolm X. He drove a lot of the anger. And the third, a lot of people don't know, is Thurgood Marshall. He affected the law, and we need to go after the law because the law doesn't work in this country. So I think I don't know what that means, Dave, but yeah, right, I gotcha. So yeah, that's the thing, you know, like, so in the American Civil Rights movement, there's 3 weapons: the motivation, the anger, the legal. And I think we really need to step up this legal aspect and file these charges against Trudeau. So we have the motivation behind us as Canadians. That's what we do. France has the anger, like Malcolm X did during the American Civil War or Civil Rights movement. And we need to step up the legal. Those are the 3 weapons that were used in the American Civil War or Civil Rights movement. So hi, Lacey. So like the artillery has different weapons by changing the projectile, and we can affect how that weapon is delivered. We need to deliver this weapon this legal weapon, these charges against Trudeau. And we need to keep hitting them with these legal charges against Trudeau in different ways, like we did in the military. But everything here is going to be lawful, legal, because that's what we do as Canadians. You have a good point, Daryl. There's a lot of lawyers that have become politicians. And it made me wonder if it was reasonable for politicians to know that they have the power to hold Trudeau accountable. There's a small problem with that. That being like my lawyer says, the law as it is written works. What doesn't work is those that uphold the law, whom don't know the law. I don't always talk about that because I don't want to, blacklist my lawyer. But to quote my lawyer, he closes by saying, those who don't know the law, and there's a lot of lawyers, judges, and politicians who don't know the law. So it might be reasonable to assume that a lot of lawyers don't know they can hold Trudeau accountable. And so a lot of politicians won't know that they can hold Trudeau accountable. I don't know if I'm lucky, but I've been made by the system to learn the law. I'm a product of the system. And so from day one in the military in '94 till now, still learning the law. It is, Daryl, treason is well covered in the criminal code. And by Tom Engel's evidence and the RCMP file number 18-004212, that qualifies as high treason. I don't remember the exact section of the criminal code that falls under, but it does qualify as high treason. That's right, Daryl. That's the biggest problem, is they know, they just won't go after their buddies or the opposition, because next election it's their ass on the line. Just going back to read some of the comments before I leave you guys. I'd much rather have a real estate tycoon running our country. #Trump. Definitely need change, and I think that's Max Bernier. But I think the next 4 years will need to affect real change. No matter who gets voted in, I think it'll take us at least 4 years to start seeing effective change. There's lots of examples about how long it takes, and the definition of a revolution suggests relatively quick. Relatively being, I think, of all the examples I've found, seems a few years, 4 to 6, and I shouldn't put a number on it, but you know. Dave earlier commented, do you guys keep on the de jure government page with Jackie Phoenix? I don't, Dave, but in the title above, I've included a link from Hong Kong where a lawyer wrote, I forget what it's called, a British lawyer wrote, I forget what it's called, but what that does is it puts two governments in one country. And in Hong Kong, that's democracy and dictatorship. So I don't think 90% of the population is going to accept a de jure government. But if it's effective, it might be an option. I'm not sure how they'll work together, but Hong Kong has an example of that, where two governments govern one country. So I'm gonna let you guys go. It'll be a few, I think it'll be a few years before I get back in the military, Dave, and if I do, and what I'll say is I have the right to protest, no matter if I'm in the military or not. So, and there's rules and laws about that, but I think I would go ahead and practice my rights to protest the government, no matter how did you say that? Are we willing to mutiny? I don't think we'll need a mutiny. I think as Canadians I think we're above that. Though and that's where I learned about in the American Civil Rights Movement. That's where I learned about Thurgood Marshall. Is there was black Navy sailors who were charged with mutiny for refusing to go back to work in an unsafe work condition. A shipyard called a magazine. The shipyard was full of explosives. The magazine had blown up, leveled the town, and a group of sailors had survived, and some were relocated to go back to start rebuilding, and some of them refused to go back to work in an unsafe work environment because the magazine, the shipyard, had blown up, leveled the town. They were charged with mutiny. Today, I think if I get back in the military, I'll practice my rights to protest the government. Yeah. I'll look up your page. Thanks, Daryl. Lacey says, it pissed me off. He's giving money to other countries, other vets, while our vets are suffering. Well, thanks, Lacey. And, yeah. There's a lot of room for improvement in our country. And I think that's a favorite military line is there's always room for improvement. Well, I think most of us would agree. There's a hell of a lot of room for improvement in our country. And so I'm doing it for the flag. I'm doing it for the people under the flag. And first and foremost, and then I think it's reasonable to help other people from other countries, but first I have a friend, a Special Forces vet, who committed suicide because of our country, because of what our government does. And I have a problem with that. I'll file the charges against I'll prepare the charges against Trudeau and I'll file them, but I don't want to say too much about how I'll deliver the charges, except I'm asking everybody who wants to go to a courthouse to do that. But I think Daryl and Dave, being veterans, I think they know that there's different ways to deliver that ammunition, these charges, and I've got a, call it a secret weapon up my sleeve. Again, everything's lawful and legal. Anyway, I'm out of here for real. Thanks for watching. On February 2016, right after Trudeau got elected, I waited until my release date, and I've been giving him ever since. We need to give him hell. So, thanks everyone. Bye for now. And we'll see what we can do. Accountability, accountability, accountability.